me see if that started the recording. I think it has. Yes. All right. All right. Hi, everybody. This is Terry Martin with CFS Consulting Group. And for those who I've not met, I'm kind of the person who handles any of the questions coming at us as far as getting those to the right resource, getting those back to you, and handle the account from different aspects. We have on here Morgan Bates. He's our lead and head of our analytics group. So he's going to be doing the demonstration of our analytical models and using Power BI. And we also have another data viz tool, which is called Spotfire. But with this one, we'll move forward with Power BI just to give you an idea what that looks like. And we kind of give you an overview of the different analytical models. And this is going to be, and Morgan will probably emphasize this as well, it's as informal as possible. So if questions come up or things like that you want to have a little bit more clarity around, please don't feel shy. Go ahead and ask us, and especially him, and he'll address those as needed and everything. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions? Okay, good. All right, what I'm going to do.
I've got a question. Sorry, I was on mute.
Sure. No problem, David.
So again, David, Spotfire. So you're going to demo using Power BI, which is one tool. Spotfire. Tell me, Spotfire, is that a CFS proprietary tool?
No, sorry. It's TIBCO Spotfire. So
TIBCO. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So it's their data viz tool.
Got it. Okay, but we're going to be focused on Power BI. Perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think you guys had probably a little bit more familiarization with Power BI, so it might look very familiar. We can always down the road be able to look at Spotfire if you want to take a look at that. We like to usually consider Power BI as an extension of the Microsoft suite of products. It tends to be a little bit more operational reporting tool, dashboarding tool. Where Spotfire is more an ad hoc, business-friendly type of tool. So marketing tends to gravitate towards that, whereas some of the other folks like to be able to control the back end using and centralize that part of it with Power BI. So we speak both languages and both tools. We have our models in both tools, except for one. One is strictly Spotfire. That's our geospatial one. Just because Power BI does not really give a great way of being able to utilize geospatial right now, currently. So we've done it that way. But again, they're very similar for how the models have been built and used very closely that way. It's just the end user from you guys, how you all want to be able to allow the analyst or the folks who are going to be using it, be familiar with that tool. So with this one, we chose Power BI just from that piece of it, and we can always give you a little bit of a flavor of Spotfire as well. Hopefully that helps. So great, thank you. So what I'll do is I'm going to turn my camera off as well, and let Morgan. I'm going to turn it over to you, bud.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate everybody's time and being here. Just real quick, are you using any tool today, or are you wanting to kind of explore some of the different tools out there?
No, I mean, right now we're using the ARCU SSRS, and then we do have some with Power BI. So, that would be our tool that we'd want to focus on.
Okay, great. So part of the reason for the question is that I've got some architecture slides of how does this stuff flow into a data visualization tool. But if you already got one, then I won't bother to kind of go through that. Perfect. Okay, as Terry mentioned, this is going to be very informal. Do we have a hard stop at 11 your time, or is that a little bit squishy?
This is Joe Ranini. I'm jumping off at 10:45, but if the rest of the team can join or stay on, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll try to stay in the confines here. We've got way more content than we can squish into an hour. So I'm going to go through a couple things, but we've got several models that we can explore in depth that we'll kind of talk about here in just a little bit. I'm going to start with this transaction analytics connector first, mainly because it underpins a lot of our models that are out there, and partly because just it's so useful in so many different contexts. So I'm going to kind of start with that, and then we'll kind of circle back and kind of talk about some of the other models that come off of that. And as you'll find, I'm sorry, I should probably check real quick. Can people see my screen okay?
Yes. Yeah, I can.
Okay. Which you'll find that basically almost everything that we do really started with a credit union came to us with a problem that they needed help with, that they were having a hard time solving on their own. And really, the analytics connector is no different. This started with credit union came to us and said, you know what, we've got this great relationship with our members, but we know that they have relationships with other institutions. We know this, they know it. We just don't know what it's for, or what loans and for what institutions, right? So some credit unions will go to Experian, you pay them $100,000, and they give you a lot of information about your members. What loan, where was it originated, what's the interest? I mean, they just give you plenty of information, but it's expensive and it's not always very timely. Some of that data can be 6, 7, 8 months old. So it's not very real time to your members. And it's very painful for most marketing groups to try and parse out this giant data dump and hope you get some value out of it. Some places have a really strong IT group, and so marketing group may put in a ticket and say, okay, I want to go look at Wells Fargo transactions. And IT will work with it for 6, 7, 8 weeks and go, I think this is what it is. I see that there's a bunch of different ways that Wells Fargo is spelled. So here's what I got. Marketing's going to look at that and go, okay, that's what I asked for, but I don't know if that's a credit card or a mortgage or a personal. I don't know what that is, so I don't really know how to build a campaign around it. So it's again, it's very tough. It's not very timely. You don't know if you're really getting a good capture there. So there's really several problems that are happening there. One is you don't want to do Experian because that's expensive. You want this to be a repeatable process. So really you got to focus on transactions. Well, the transactions that are inside of ARCU, they're pretty splintered. They're very hard to work with. They're a record and a transaction are not the same thing. A record and a transaction could be 6, 7, 8 records, and they're going to split across 3 different tables. It's really, really hard to work with from an analytical standpoint. So the first problem is to consolidate the transactions down into one place. So one record and one transaction are the same thing. But that's not quite enough to make life easy for your marketing group. You really need to clean them up and classify them so that they know what they're looking at. And then lastly, you got to put a dashboard on top of it. Okay, and that's what you're looking at here. This has been pulled from a real environment. Obviously, it's been cleansed to make sure that there's nothing, no personal information here. But you're kind of seeing what this very rudimentary dashboard would look like, uncustomized, coming from their environment. Say, I want to know about mortgages, and I want to look at members who are between 18 and 45. Oops, just click there. And they're with Wells Fargo. There's 323 members representing $500,000 worth of payments done in the last 30 days. Oops, go away. I want to do that. There, 323. So $500,000 worth of payments in the last 30 days. And so obviously this is going to be a very cleansed list here. You can take that list out and you can go create a campaign around it. And even if you never mentioned Wells Fargo, you could be very detailed in your messaging about how you can serve that member better than what they're currently being served with Wells Fargo. And so that does 2 things. One, you be more detailed in your messaging, right? You can make that a more tailored message. We've all seen that, dear quote unquote valued member that looks like it's gone to 100,000. The reason why it looks like it went to 100,000 people is because it did, right? That's not very personable, especially in this age of more personable marketing. The other thing you don't always see is the contact fatigue that happens with contacting members too many times for things that are not relevant to them. You do that too often, they'll stop looking at your messaging for regardless of what channel that you're working from. So it's got a couple of different benefits there. Take a little pause there. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay.
It does. It does. Thank you.
All right. So you may say, okay, so what? So I've got a more detailed campaign. What does that matter to me in terms of dollars and cents? So one of our clients that was already running this was kind enough to give us some numbers. So they kind of give us an old campaign and a new campaign to kind of compare. So this was a very traditional auto campaign. I went to 23,000 members. There's kind of like everybody who doesn't have a charge off and is open and those kinds of things. Pretty open. Plus some billboard and radio spots. Pretty typical, right? And they generated about $7.6 million worth of new auto loans from that. It's pretty good. It spent $48,000 to generate $7.6 million, giving them an ROI of 150. So every dollar of marketing they spent on this, they got $150 worth of loans. It's pretty good. They got a response rate of 1.2%. We'll ignore the radio and billboard portion of this for the moment. We'll just say we're only going to look at the 23,000 members, 1.2% response rate. Pretty typical. This is what we've heard from a lot of credit unions in terms of their marketing campaigns. Is there anybody on the call that kind of knows your numbers a little bit? Is this in line with what you do currently?
I don't have that information, but maybe Julie or Joe have that.
No, I don't know. That'll be more of a marketing question.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not
okay.
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that we're
let's assume
tracking
that it is.
to that.
Yeah, no worries. I was just curious. Sometimes you've got somebody in marketing who already knows that number off the top of their head, and they can be like, "Yes, that's exactly it," or "We do a little bit better, but not dramatically." Okay. So once they had this marketing, the transaction analytics connector and that dashboard installed, they generated a new campaign. But this time, instead of just going to 23,000 members, kind of indiscriminately, they targeted 4,500 members who had external loans already with auto loans with other institutions. Of that, they generated 143 loans, representing 3.9 million, and they spent 13,000. Now you may go, well, 3.9 is quite a bit less than 7.6, but keep in mind they only spent 13K, which gave them an ROI of 300, not 150. So for every dollar of marketing, they got 300 back in loans. They doubled their ROI. They also tripled their response rate. So that's pretty significant differences. In terms of, if you think about very scarce assets that a lot of credit unions are seeing, they don't have unlimited budgets, right? You're not Wells Fargo with trillions of dollars to go spend. You got to be very, very effective with your budgets. You just by changing how you're using the data that you already have, you double the effectiveness of your data, of your marketing campaigns. Any questions about that? Okay.
No.
All right, so I'll point out one other kind of campaign that I may want to kind of highlight here is we also capture credit cards. We capture auto loans. There's several loan types. I'll point at the credit cards because as part of the tables that we generate, we have a member table. And on that, we like to put behavioral characteristics, so not just do they have an external credit card. We also run a model that says, are they likely to carry a credit card balance or not? Because your marketing group has campaigns that says, I want them to transfer a balance in. So I don't just want them to have a credit card somewhere else. I want them to have a balance at that credit card. So I'm going to look at credit cards, but this time I'm going to say I want them to carry a credit card balance, and they're between 18 and 45, and they're with Chase, Capital One, and Citi. There's 2,400 members representing $2 million worth of payments. And if the industry is any guide, this is the total balance on the other side is probably 4 to 6 times this value. So you talk about $10 million that's sitting on the other side of this. So you export this out, go create a campaign around it, and now you're only touching members who have both an external credit card and are carrying a credit card balance somewhere else. So it's not just do they have it, but you can start to incorporate behavioral characteristics into this that make your campaigns even more effective.
I just had a question. Is this like month-end data, or is this like a point-in-time data?
So this is always the last 30 days is the way we've kind of set up. Now, every once in a while we'll get a customer that says, I want to look at the last 6 months versus the last 30 days. That's completely configurable into what you bring into your Power BI dashboard, right? But that's our typical setup, is looking at the last 30 days. But this data is refreshed every single day.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right, so we don't just capture ACH kinds of transactions. We also capture point of sale transactions, which can be really, really handy if you're wanting to kind of understand where are people spending their money, but also if you wanted to do like HELOCs or something like that. So you always say, I want to go look at people that go to home improvement stores and they're 18 to 35 and they go to home improvement stores, and we'll go to the big box stores first and they go to Lowe's, right? I can create a list from this, go export that out and go create a campaign around and say, hey, you know, you just spent $500 at Lowe's. Probably shouldn't tell them you know that, but at a home improvement store, did you know we offer HELOCs as well? So it gives you a different way to kind of target a group based upon their point of sale behavior, and not just, once again, just blanketing everyone in your membership, right? So it's kind of a side benefit to this whole thing. We never really set out to do this, but the way that the data is structured is that you can actually get a real-time summary of who your competitors are. So you go to most credit unions and say, okay, who's your biggest competitor? It's always big bank down the street. You go, okay, well, for what products and for how much? You almost always get crickets. Almost no credit union really has that data available at their fingertips. If they have it at all, it's usually some report that got generated 5 years ago. It's not now. And so for this credit union, they're losing $30 million a month in and month out in payments to their credit card competitors. And if you look at that, they didn't know that they were losing $7.3 million to Chase every single month. I mean, they knew it was kind of a big number. Chase is a major competitor of theirs, but they didn't know what the number was or how big it was. So from this, they can now start to have good conversations around, well, what is Chase is offering our memberships? What are they using it for? Is that something that we can compete with? There's just something we can do better than what Chase is doing today. And if I go spend $100,000 on that, what do I go get back out of that? Well, if you get 6% of that market, then you know what that number is. Now you can have numbers-based conversations around your competitors versus the I hope I feel conversations that normally happen today. Do you have competitor data already available, or is this of interest to you?
Not that I know of. Reed, do you know if we get anything?
Not outside of the standard Epicus ATM dialogue.
Yeah.
I think we've looked at this in the past, but you know, and again, this information is somewhat consistent, right? It's going a lot to these big banks, big FIs, credit card, auto, some of these. But yeah, we're not consistently looking at it. So
Sure.
Right. Our past efforts were, as was described, where we were doing our best to scrape ATM dialogue and translate all of the numerous variations on what comes across in terms of names or
Sure.
merchant codes, but those only go so far too.
Right.
yeah,
So-
it's just
Morgan?
the level of effort to put this together was, you know, time consuming. That's why. So to be able to visualize this easily would be very helpful.
Perfect.
On a daily basis too, right? Because this data gets updated on a daily basis. But Morgan, just one quick question. When you say merchant spend, is it where a member will be paying, for example, a credit card bill, and that's how you categorize it? How do you capture? Where would you capture that credit card spend information from?
Right. Yeah. So this is coming from your transactional record. So when they have a shared deposit with or share product with you, and they make a payment to say Chase, we
Okay.
capture that and we mine the text information, kind of like you're doing already. We're just doing it on a more systemic basis. We're crunching millions of records all at once, and we're doing it across multiple credit unions. So we have a lot of data to work with to kind of go, when I see this pattern, it's both Chase and I know it's a credit card. Right?
Okay. So it's not really a day-to-day spending habits. It's kind of like how much have they paid and in what categories on a monthly basis. So for a member, that data will be updated at least once a month, because typically you would pay your credit card bill once a month, right? And obviously different times during the month for all the members, but that's how it's going to be updated. Kind of
Right.
the view. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
We update our transaction table every single day. So as those transactions happen, we bring those transactions, we clean them, we classify them, we put them in our transaction table. So this is always updated with yesterday's information, going back as far back as you've got data.
But transaction, you mean if it's another FI's credit card, the transaction is really just the payment. If it's
Correct.
on us, it's on our credit card, then we know where they're going to be using it for. But if they use a Chase card, we wouldn't know exactly what they
Correct.
used to pay for it, because we're going to just pay Chase, right? Whoever that member is, and not necessarily the transaction, right?
Yeah,
Just want to make sure that
yeah, you're only aware of the payment side of those transactions, not where they're swiping their Chase card. So it's not like if they're swiping their Chase card, it's flowing to your environment where you know where they're spending that money. You just know that they got a Chase card. What they're doing with it, we don't know, right?
Yep. So that merchant spend on the prior screen, or the prior where it says load, that's really on us. That's our card.
Correct.
That visibility.
This is your debit card information, and if you got credit card on core, or if you've got PSCU transactions and you got our PSCU connector, we'll incorporate those credit card transactions into this so that it's all in one place. So it looks like it's both the credit card and the debit card. So we can say, I don't care whether they used a credit card or debit card. This is their home improvement spend at Lowe's. I don't care what card or what day, right?
Sounds good.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. So one of the other cool things that you can do is you can kind of come in here is, because it's all nice and consolidated, your marketing folks can ask silly questions. Whereas before, you never really wanted to ask a silly question because you had to put it in a ticket, right? You have to ask serious people to put serious time into it. Now you kind of go, you know what? I want to go run a campaign on barbecue, right? I want to go know who's going to barbecue joints, because I want to go run a promotion this summer around people to go to barbecue places. You don't really want to put that in a ticket, right? Because I don't even know how many people that is. But this allows you to kind of just go search for stuff and not have to go put in major tickets to go do it, right? It allows you to kind of do this ask and answer in real time and do it across millions of records without having to know what's happening underneath, right? I didn't have to go write a query. I don't have to know how SQL works. I don't have to know how some other technical language works. I didn't have to go build a model in Python, right? This is all real time. You can just expose it to the end users without IT having to get involved. So it's kind of a nice feature. It's not, it's not artificial intelligence. It's not machine learning. It doesn't meet any of the buzzwords, but it's really, really nice to have that you can kind of self-serve like that. Questions about that?
I think I'm just wondering about the availability of so it seems like this is kind of denormalizing the transaction records that are kind of stock. So do we have access to that? Or is it only, is what you provide only sort of denormalizing for this dashboard? Does that make sense? Like, is it pulling it into, it looks like Power BI and then building out your facts and dimensions, or is that actually a set of fact and dimension tables that we would have access to?
Right. Yeah. So when you get the transaction analytic connector, we're going to build you a table called the transactions table, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And it's already going to be cleansed, and it's a table you can get to. It's not locked up. It's going to be on the same box as your ARCU server, or at least we almost always put it on the same box as the ARCU server. We have our own database there, but it's on the same box 99.2% of the time. Now, we've already built a Power BI model around this, so you don't have to go, I'm going to take my transactions and I'm going to go get the transactions type. I'm going to go get the product categories. I'm going to go get the... This makes it easier for lots of places because we've already built this. But if you don't want the Power BI dashboard model that we've already built for you, this tape, the transaction table is there, the transaction types table, it's all there. It's all available for you to go use right away. And it's not unheard of for our clients to go, you know what, I'm not in Power BI and I'm not in Spotfire. I'm on Tableau. All this stuff is already out there. Or I want to go build an SSRS report, or I want to go. So almost when you look at our models here, let me show you real quick. When you look at this, 98% of the heavy lifting, the work, is being done at the table level, right? So whatever is your last mile, it's really doesn't matter all that much to us, to be honest with you. We work in multiple technologies. The heavy lifting is in the analytics connector and in the model, but all of that is really being done at the table level, and then you can go consume it inside of Power BI via the transactions table or something like that. Does that make sense?
So,
Yep. Yeah,
and
yeah.
thank you for that. Oh, go ahead. Read, please.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just asking because from a marketing perspective, I think these dashboards would be useful for exploration, but we do have a relationship with another company, Deep Target, that that does take extracts from us and kind of structures our at least digital ad campaigns, and they can do like a little bit of inferencing and machine learning. So I was hoping, and you confirmed it, that this would be available to us so that we could incorporate it in some way. So through exploration, if we're looking at, say, Wells Fargo, and we're like, oh, we need to really target these members, we could find a way to translate that to Deep Target and have their system run these campaigns for us. So.
Sure. Yep. No, that's a pretty typical use case, is to take, I want to go take this data and move it somewhere else. So you've got Deep Target there. A lot of folks will say, you know what, I want to go move this into my CRM, because when they walk into a branch, I want my folks to say, when they walk in there, now obviously this is not set up directly for this, is I want to see that member has got an external credit card and they've got an external mortgage. I want to see those when the member's right there in the branch in real time. So they incorporate into their CRM, but they can now do cross-sell on products that member has somewhere else. Not just, well, they don't have a credit card, so offer them a credit card. Not realizing they already have 16 credit cards, and that's the last thing you want to do, is offer them yet another credit card. They don't have one with you. That doesn't mean they don't have 15 somewhere else. So it gives you kind of gives a little power to your branch folks to give some more detailed cross-selling opportunities than just, well, they don't have credit cards, so offer them that, right? Whatever is the promotion in that branch that month, right?
Hey, Morgan, can you drill down from your dashboard? Can you drill down all the way to the member level?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what this is, all the way over on this right-hand side.
But that's from a category. So, for example, if I want to start from a member level, is there a dashboard to say, Mr. James Taylor just walked in, I want to see his profile?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I think that would have been the CRM application.
Yeah, so I'll show you. I've got a Spotfire version of that. I don't have a Power BI version of that.
Okay. But it is something that is already pre-built, or you just don't have it. You haven't built it yet, or you just don't have a demo.
I don't have one. I don't have a Member 360 in Power BI built, but I don't think it would be hard to do it. Okay. We already have a member model. I'll kind of show you that real quick. So this is the member model. So I've got my member data, I got member metrics, all that kind of good stuff. We would just need to go build a tab over here that looks like whatever you want to do in terms of Member 360. I'll show you real quick. So member walks into the branch, you type in their account number or SSN or something like that, right? And it comes up and tells you, okay, they've been a member for 10 years, their revenue's 225, their credit score's 880, their estimated income's 108,000, they have a direct deposit, so on and so forth. Here's their share and loan balance with you. Here's their specific products and the specific balances. Here's the revenue they generated over the last 6 months. And here's their external products. I was kind of mentioning that, you don't want to be offering credit cards to somebody who's already got a bunch of credit cards. Here's a perfect example. So this member already has $1,700 worth of payments and credit cards every month. So even if they don't currently have a credit card with you, offering them another credit card, it's bad for you and it's bad for the member, right? That's not going to do either of you any good. So it's the same data, but instead of being aggregated around trying to target overall product, it's now aggregated around the member. It's kind of like the hub of the wheel versus the product. Same data, just aggregated differently.
But again, this is from the perspective of what we are being used for by that member. Right? Because if the member has a different primary FI, we wouldn't, and they're using that for a lot of their other payments, we won't have that visibility.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
This is just really primarily what we're using our SkyOne share accounts for payments.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's not everything, right? If you really want to get everything, then you got to go to Experian and get all of the loan data from them. But once again, very, very expensive to do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
most credit unions just don't have the budget to spend $1.5 million, $2
Yeah.
million with Experian to get that data. When this, or at least let's call it 60% or 70% of that data is already in-house and you already have it available, why not, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is really maximizing the use of the data that we already have about
Right.
our members. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. This is data you've already gotten. I think that's the frustrating part for some credit unions. They look at this, go, you mean this data is I've already got it? Well, why have we been doing this for the last decade? What are we doing here? Well, because it's hard. Stitching that stuff together is hard. It sounds like we've got some folks on the call that have tried to mine stuff out of ATM dialogue. They'll tell you it's hard. It is not fun to go mine ATM dialogue or comment records out of a DBO savings transaction. It's not fun. That's why the tool exists, is because it automates all of that work.
Absolutely. I think what we're and you explained it earlier. The value of this offering is really the intellectual property that we're purchasing or subscribing to is your ETL process and your data model.
Right.
That's really it. Those are the two kind of valuable intellectual property that we're really going to be able to leverage if we decide to move forward with this. And obviously the visualization portion on your dashboard.
Yeah, some credit unions, they've got a bunch of people in-house that already know how to do Power BI, and they're like, yeah, just give us some models, right? But other credit unions, they look at this and be like, I don't want to touch that. I don't even know what that is, let alone how to go build it. Please give us a complete solution and help me get up to speed. Don't walk away. Help me build this and help me get trained in this stuff to walk away. So every credit union is different about where you draw that line, about where you stop helping and where they kind of start helping themselves.
It's great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to shift gears just slightly because I want to talk about member retention. And as I said before, basically everything we've ever built started with another credit union coming to us with a problem. And this started with credit union came to us with a member attrition model that they got from another consulting firm. They're like, this attrition model we were told was 97.8% accurate. We just don't really have the expertise, the technical expertise to kind of implement. We know it's good. We just need your help to put it in. And as we kind of started to spend some time looking at the model, we realized there's some problems with it. Really, the biggest issue was that the model was very focused on deposits. Now, most people have different deposit patterns, right? There's lots of patterns out there. There's the 1st and the 15th. There's every Tuesday. There's every Friday. Whatever the pattern is, most people have the same patterns for fairly long periods of time, right? It's not like most members are going to walk in, make 18 deposits on the 1st of the month, and then not make a deposit for 6 months. That's just not how most people work. Most people are very consistent in their deposit patterns. So this attrition model is really good at going, okay, I was expecting a deposit on the 1st of the month. It's now the 10th. I'm going to kick you out a report that says you're likely to attrition. Now, I want you to imagine what that looks like, right? When you call up the member and go, excuse me, Mr. Member, you're very valuable to us. What's going on here? And he says, well, I changed that like 6 weeks ago, because by the time you file the paperwork and everything like that flows through, you may be 30, 45 days out from the time that they made a decision to change their deposit somewhere else. You have long since missed that window to keep that member, right? And all you've done is irritated them that you finally showed up a month later. So even though the model was technically accurate, didn't do the thing you wanted to do, which was to keep the member in the first place. So we kind of said, okay, well, we can't in good conscience put this thing in. We don't want to charge you just to give you something that isn't going to actually help you do what you want to do. So from that, we did what every credit union does. We looked at product combinations, we looked at income, we looked at zip code, we looked at socioeconomic effect. I mean, we looked at everything to try and figure out early warning signs of attrition. Problem is, they don't work. They're all, by the time you notice something is about to go wrong, it is too late. They are already gone. That moment has happened. It's too late. And so what we figured out is that we were actually looking at the wrong side of the problem. What we needed to be doing was looking at member retention. Is there something about members who stayed for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Is there something different about them? And it turns out there is. and it's in their transactional records. We talked about earlier how these transaction analytics connector underpins everything, mainly because there's just so much good information in there. And it turns out inside of there is the key to member retention. And we figured out is that there's certain kinds of transactions, if they have the right kinds and the right amounts, the probability of them leaving is almost zero. Actually, one credit union is 0.14% across the 6-month horizon. We can get into that in just a minute. But basically, they're just not going anywhere. And from that, you can kind of start to classify people to kind of go, okay, in some places we call it full keys, and some places we call it high retention. Depends on the credit union. And say, okay, well, they had some of the right kinds of things, but not enough, right? So they didn't move into the highest tier. You say, okay, they had some of the transactions, but not what we want in terms of the types or the amounts. And then, of course, the dreaded no transactional group. You know you're going to hemorrhage members from this group because you really don't have a relationship with them at the end of the day. So the name of the game is not try and grab them as they're walking out the door. You want to change their behavior while you still can. You want to nudge their transactional behavior into the highest retention groups. So you say, okay, I'm going to go target members with some keys, and they're between 18 and 45, and they already have direct deposit. There's 1,800 members that I'm going to go create a campaign around, and I'm going to go try and nudge them towards certain kinds of transactional behavior that is in the highest retention. You say, well, okay, well, that's great, but what do I get out of it, right? Why does that matter? Well, let me show you. This is, once again, from another credit union. So this is the attrition rate for the member retention model. So if they're in the highest retention group, this particular credit union had 32,000 members, and across the 6-month horizon, they lost 143 members out of this group, 0.14%. And I'd be willing to bet if you go look at that 143, they all left for a very, very specific reason. I'm leaving because I'm going to Australia, right? They didn't just attrition out. They had specific purpose around it. And as you move up the categories, you can see how the attrition rate basically doubles from group to group, right? So as I move to the model retention, 0.22, to some transactions, 0.65, to no transactions where it's 1.25. And you may say, well, 1.25 is not that bad. Keep in mind, that's 1.25% of 35,000 people. You double it for the year, you're looking at 1,600, right? So you lost 1,800 members, so it's 3,000, let's call it 3,400, 3,600. What's your cost of acquisition? Now, if you're CFO or one of your accounting folks, maybe they know what that is, but that's money that you paid to acquire that member that just walked out the door for maybe almost no revenue. If they're in the no transactional group, they weren't generating any revenue for you, right? So you've already paid the cost of acquisition. This is all losses, right? So you want to move them into the highest retention categories, just from an attrition rate standpoint, right? Questions about that so far? Okay, so I'll go to the other side.
Sorry, was
Yeah.
slow. I noticed on one of on the dashboard, I guess there was a selector for direct deposit. How does what you provide support like custom SkyOne business rules or business logic? So if we aren't using direct deposit, just sparked the idea, but I know that Ephesus has a direct deposit field OEM. If we're using a different system that we've developed to track certain like business objects, things like direct deposit, how do your models support that? Would we address that during implementation, or is it just kind of set to use the OEM fields out of Ephesus and then?
So it depends on how you want them integrated. So some places they say, you know what, I'm getting a flat file from over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring my flat file into this Power BI. Let's say I'm over here, right?
Right.
I'm doing external loans. I'm just going to, add that flat file and incorporate it inside of this Power BI dashboard, right? That's one way of doing it. Especially if you're just kind of like, I don't even know if I want to go to the trouble of fully integrating it. Let me just add it as a file here, tinker with it, see how it works, and then I'll bring it into a database. That's one call. Usually, so let's give you an example. So one very typical customization is we've already got a are they a member or not? Kind of like a generic version says, do they have $5 in a share account? Well,
Right.
lots of credit unions have a lot more logic around their membership. So what we'll do is we'll create a custom column on our member table that incorporates your specific member logic. It says, okay, it's not just $5 in a share. They don't have any charge-offs. They're not dead, right? And they don't have
exactly.
fees,
Yeah.
and they have to
Not a
join
corp card, that
and they
kind
have
of
to have
thing,
one of these account types, and there's a whole bunch of rules. We'll incorporate all of that into a custom column that gets tacked onto this member table, right?
Yep.
That's super typical, right? Now, I mean, there's other things where you incorporate at different levels. You say, okay, at the account level, we've got an account table where you can incorporate account metrics. Like I want to keep track of opt-in, opt-out at the account level. We have an account table where you can put all those custom columns to keep track of all that. And then maybe you aggregate up to the member table. But yeah, it kind of depends on what it is and where you want to put it, how incorporated you want it to be. We've seen every flavor under the sun, so to speak.
Right. Basically, what you're saying is that you can handle it, and so it's not a big deal.
Yep. Yeah.
Got it. Yep.
Whatever flavor you want to incorporate it in, we've probably run into it at least 6 or 7 different times. Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Was just wondering that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay. So on the member retention revenue side, so you say, okay, well, now I kept them. So what, right? So once again, another credit union that we're kind enough to kind of donate their numbers. This group had 33,000 high retention members who represent $20 million worth of revenue, representing $621 per member, but also represented $7.7 million worth of interchange income, representing $230 per member for this time period. Now, I'm going to point out the interchange income in specific because for a lot of credit unions, this is the lowest risk revenue that they have. It doesn't come like compared to a loan comes, especially if it's a loan that doesn't have an asset sitting behind it. You have an unsecured loan, well, that's a lot of risk, right, that you're generating revenue from. Interchange income, it's their share dollars that are generating income for you every time they swipe their card. This is about as risk-free as the highest profit and revenue you're going to get, right? So this is very, very important income, especially as you see their fee income reduce. You got to go make that up somewhere, right? And interchange income is a really, really good place to go make it up. But as you move down in tiers, you can see that revenue really drops off dramatically from that high retention down to the no transactional group, right? That's pretty significant, right? To go from, say, $470 up to $620. More importantly, the $244 to the $230. That's a huge jump in terms of your interchange income. Okay, any questions about member retention as a whole?
I may have missed it. What does total revenue reflect?
So this is all of their revenue. So this could be fee income, interchange income, loan interest income. It is their total revenue for that group.
Okay.
Is there an additional thought there?
No, just thinking about it. I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Morgan, Julie is our financial analyst leading that group. And so that's the reason for that question. So thank you, Julie. That's a good question.
And the reason I was asking because, you know, we are thinking about doing member profitability and where we look at, right, the loan and deposit relationship. And so I was just trying to understand what revenue meant here.
Sure.
But it's similar, it sounds like, in this regard.
Yeah, actually, that's actually a perfect lead into some of the other models that we build. One of them is actually a member revenue model right here. And part of it, so you get the loan side of it. That's usually pretty straightforward for most places is what's my loan revenue, right? And one of the things that we do is we actually calculate the interchange income at the member level. So you can incorporate both their loan and share income in the same place. It's one of the things that really gets missed. So you go, okay, well, they don't have a loan, then they don't mean anything to me, right? Well, that's not quite the case. If they're swiping their debit card 100 times a month, they're worth quite a bit to you, right? It may not be loan income, but that debit card income, that interchange income is not nothing. So this member revenue model helps you incorporate all that and aggregate it up to the member and say, what is the total revenue for that member? Now, before I get to the question, because I know it's going to happen, this is not a profitability model. This does not incorporate costs, mainly because the cost that you want to incorporate is not the same as the cost that some other credit union wants to incorporate, which is not the same as somewhere else. We ran into the problem of the cost side of the equation is completely unique to every credit union, and it just was not worth the overhead to try and maintain it. So we have a member revenue model that can lead you into a member profitability. So essentially we've got, let's call it half the equation done for you. And then depending on how you want to do the cost side of the equation, that can be very simplistic or very, very detailed. But at least you've got a consistent member revenue model to start with.
And Morgan, just for clarification, and I think Terry already explained this before. So typically you offer these products, first, obviously the transaction analytics connector, and then it comes with some sort of a starter package type of analytics model. But a lot of these analytics model are kind of like a la carte, right? You don't package all of them together. Is correct?
Yep,
okay.
Absolutely. So let's say the analytics connector is this bottom piece down here, right? You buy this, you're going to get the transactions table, but you're also going to get this dashboard that you're seeing right here with the external loans, the buying behavior, the competitor summary, the transaction trend, the point of sale. You're going to get this dashboard and this model for free, right? You get that out of the box. The moment you buy the transaction analytics connector, you get all of this for free. Now, you may come back and say, yep, that's awesome. Now I want the member revenue model or the member retention. You can buy these top ones a la carte. Or you say, you know what? I got problems with my members. I want to buy all the models on the members. That's there's different combinations, right? I even got this down in different combination, typical combinations to go member engagement. So it's the analytics connector, the member retention, and the new member redirect, right? That's one version up here. Here's another. I mean, you can combine them in whatever combination. Because what we found is that some credit unions would go, I got to do member retention today. I couldn't care less about predicting which loans are going to charge off. My charge-offs are so small, I couldn't care less. So it's just a la carte, and they pick which ones that are important to them, right?
Which is great, right? So, for example, we may be focusing on member retention this year, but next year, after we have a program in place, we're pretty good about our member retention, we might focus on member revenue, right?
Sure.
And then we can basically stop that subscription, right? That because it's a subscription model, right? It's not like a perpetual licensing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the way it works is you normally pay an upfront fee and then you pay the maintenance after that. But if 2 years from now you go, you know what? I don't care about member retention. Yeah. Be done with it, right?
Yep. And then we're going to switch to loan revenue mismatch. And you may have developed other models that you have demoed to us. Okay, I want to use this for the next year. And then we can always do that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So like a really typical scenario is they go, I want the analytics connector. I want the member retention to start with. I want to make sure I generate the revenue from that I expect. And then 6 months after we get installed and they're seeing good numbers, then they come back and go, now I want the member revenue. I want the revenue mismatch, and I want the financial education. They kind of self-fund these future projects from the revenue that they're generating from the first projects. That's not an untypical scenario.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, I'm down to like 9 minutes here. I know I haven't had a chance to kind of talk through each of these models. Are any of these that kind of pop out to folks that they kind of want to get a little more information around?
So I guess typically when we subscribe to this, and obviously the transaction analyst connector needs to be built, what's the typical implementation timeline for just the out of the box what you shared earlier, the 3 or 4 kind of like starter dashboards and the transaction analytics connector? What's the implementation look like? How does it look like?
Yeah, usually it takes us longer to sign all the paperwork and to get all the credentials set up and to get us logins and to do all that stuff than it takes for us to do the install. And really, this dashboard, basically the moment that the analytics connector is installed, this thing's running that day. Now, we always do some tweaks in terms of the classifications because there's always some institutions that are local to that credit union. You know, there's places in Buffalo, New York that don't exist in Albuquerque, right? But a lot of the big ones are the same, right? If I look at this competitor summary, Chase, Capital One, Citi, Discover, Amex, Barclays, Bank of America, Visa, Sample, these are common across 99.8% of credit unions. So we do a little bit of tweaking, but really the vast majority of it is ready to go pretty much day one. So I'll assume that we've got bandwidth. So let's say we scheduled 3 months out, so we kind of have a chance to plan for it. We've got everything set up. Basically, from the time we get in there and start doing work, you're talking about, let's call it 3 to 4 weeks to get installed, run some history, make sure there's nothing goofy, make a couple amendments in terms of the dictionaries, and then you're ready to go. That's pretty typical at this point. We've done, I don't know, 10 installs, 12 installs of this, really since we got out of the R&D phase. So it goes in pretty fast right now. Member retention model, once again, assuming we got bandwidth, there's no conflicts, is again probably another 3 weeks after that. Most of this stuff flows in pretty quickly now. There's some other ones that take a little bit more time. So for instance, the charge-off prediction one, that takes more time because I've got to calibrate the risks. It creates, we create a custom risk program for you for all your loans, and then we still have to go build a model offering. So this one takes longer. It's a little less quote unquote off the shelf. There's more stuff we got to do compared to like the member retention or the analytics connector. Those just go in. That's a question of a couple of weeks kind of thing. Make sense?
Yeah. And do you have some sort of like system and technical requirements that that you can send in advance so that we can understand? Let's say, for example, you may require the host ARTU SQL server to have an increase in, I don't know, this space allocation or whatever to accommodate kind of like this product. Do you have that?
We can send you those system requirements. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just so that if ever we were planning on doing it, obviously from a budgeting perspective, from everything, that includes not just kind of like what we need to pay CFS, but also what we need to do to build up the host environment.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you're thinking ahead on that because some of our credit unions don't do that. They're like, oh, I do have to do that, don't I? Uh-oh. Right. So better take care of it up front.
It'll be included in the planning, obviously.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're down to 5 minutes here. There's got to be one other sneaky question in there. You guys are letting me off too easy. Got to give me a hard one.
What Visible Equity does is they do this analytics. They look at performance. And so, they take the rate minus charge-offs, minus, cost of funds. You can put OpEx in there. And you can run these analytics just to see how you're like, how does the net margin compare? Is that something that's done here? Again, trying to understand, the capabilities of Visible Equity, and there's because it feels like there could be overlap, but I want to see what.
We try not to have too much overlap with Visible Equity, just because there's already a product there. And there's a lot of people who are happy with Visible Equity. So we've, for the most part, tried to work in spaces where they're not or where there isn't already a lot of people, because there's still a lot of gaps out there. So for instance, this loan revenue mismatch. So really this is around, so lots of people do profitability analysis. Go, okay, you've got 6,000 car loans, here's your charge off, here's your interest, here's your quote unquote profitability, right? That's very typical stuff. There's not just Visible Equity, there's lots of folks that do that. This is really focused on to go, okay, how much were you supposed to get for that loan? Your loan policy is set up to generate a certain amount of revenue, right, for a certain amount of risk, right? That's the whole point of the loan policy. All right, so this loan was supposed to generate $2,500 in revenue when you first originated based upon the loan policy. How much are you actually going to get out of it? Very, very few places actually run that analysis to go, I was supposed to get 25, I'm only going to get 14. Well, if I stack that up across the portfolio, do I have places in my portfolio that are greatly underperforming? Almost no credit unions that we've run into can answer that question. They may say as a whole, I'm profitable, quote unquote, but very few can point at specific loans or specific parts of their portfolio that are underperforming. That's what this loan revenue mismatch is. So almost kind of by design, we're kind of not wanting to play in the same places as visible equity because there's a bunch of stuff that they already do and they're really good at. So there's no point in trying to reproduce something that they are already good at when there's so many opportunities to fill gaps where they're not currently doing things.
So you're saying
Does that
this
make
is
sense?
this, yeah, but how does it do that here? How does it validate, oh, wow, this loan's, what attributes are leading it to be underperforming or even overperforming?
Right. So what we do is we go through and say, okay, I'm going to take just an example and say I've got an auto loan that's going to run for 5 years. All right. And when I originated, I can calculate that out to say it's going to, at this interest rate for this period, it's going to generate X dollars of revenue. All right. So this, some places they'll wait till that loan closes, then go, how much did I get? What's the mismatch between the two? We don't do that. We take what they've done so far. Let's call it, say, they're 2 years into their loan. Well, we know what that is, right? That's a known value. Once again, I'll come back to the analytics connector. Well, I can take what their payments are, and I can take that payment behavior and I can project it into the future and say, well, based upon what they've been doing, and I know what's left on their loan, I can essentially create a future loan schedule or a payment schedule. And I know what I'm going to collect in the future. Will it be 100% accurate? No, there's going to be some mismatches there. If they take their last 3 payments and they pay it off just ahead of time, that's obviously not going to be represented there. But it should still be pretty darn close. So I can take the revenue that they've generated, revenue they're likely to generate, and compare that to what was the original. And I can see it at a loan level. Let me see if I got a version of that up. Yeah, okay. So here it is. So each dot represents a loan. And so the original risk rating, so I can look at every loan and say, okay, this loan was supposed to generate $39,000 worth of interest. It actually is going to generate $67,000. So they're way over what they thought they were going to get for this loan. You get the inverse of that, which is they thought they were going to get 69. They're only going to get 3, right? So you get both sides of that coin. And you see it's fairly close to the line. Most are going to stay pretty darn close, right? It's not going to get huge swings. Was going to get 55.7, I'm going to get 55.3. That's going to be pretty typical, right? But you can start to aggregate that up into the portfolio level. So for instance, say, okay, new auto trucks or loans, they have 4,500 vehicles, current balance 82,000. They were supposed to get 26.2. They're actually going to get 26.1. So it's only up by $97,000. No big deal. That's a rounding error, basically. Same with the used, they're up by 365. New boat, a little more. This was the one that really shocked them. So they've got 4,200 RV loans. They were supposed to get 51. They're actually going to get 47. They're going to be off by $4 million there. So even when they ran their quote unquote profitability analysis, this is still profitable, right? But $4 million is not nothing in terms of the mismatch in their expectations, what they were supposed to get according to their loan policy and what they're actually going to get. This caused a lot of hard questions to go, why is this portfolio, part of the portfolio, so different from these others? Well, 2 major reasons. One is the members who tend to get these loans are north of 55 and they got a lot of cash. So what they do is they take out a loan and then they walk in the next day and put $15,000 against the loan. It's not the same loan anymore, right? The moment you lose $15,000 worth of principal, yeah.
I really apologize. I do have a hard stop.
Sure.
Because I need to be in another meeting. And this is great, and I love the questions. I think I just want to ask the team from a demo perspective. Do you all feel that you kind of gotten really a good glimpse, a deeper glimpse on this set of models and the products that CFS is offering? So Reed, Julie, Dave, Paul, Kathy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I had a question about the member model, but
And you can still ask that question. I just have to jump to another meeting. I just wanted to make sure. Please, for those of you that are flexible, it looks like CFS and Morgan is flexible. Please stay on this call. And then Terry and Morgan, if you can send me maybe a link to the recording There's at least 2-3 people that weren't able to attend that I really would love for them to listen into the great questions, to the demos. That would really be helpful for them.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna drop too. So thank you, everyone. Thank.
Reed, Julie,
Terry,
please stay
Morgan.
if you have time. Kathy, Paul, do the same. But Morgan, Terry, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. This is good.
Absolutely.
This is great.
Happy
Okay,
to help.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I actually have to jump off too right now, but thank you for showing, yeah, what you could at through so far. So that was helpful. But please continue again. I could probably just listen to the recording too, whatever is missed. So,
Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
all right, thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thanks,
You too.
Yeah, I do have something at 11, but I can stay on for a little bit longer. But I'd like to ask my question about the member model. So there's a member record in Epicus, and there's also a member object, if you want to call it that, in ARCU. Is your model, or would your model be like a third conceptual member model,
Yeah.
or does it base off of either of those?
Yeah, so ARCU really doesn't, I would hesitate to call it a member model. They have an account model, is really what it is. Now, they have a name record, but that's not really a member model. And so our member model tries to move up to a single coherent, we call it a member, but that's really not it. It's a taxable ID at the end of the day.
Right.
Are they a member or not is a completely separate question, right?
Well,
So you can have somebody who doesn't meet the requirements of being a member, they got a charge off, but there's still very much an entity inside of your environment who can take actions, right? They can make deposits, they can make withdrawals. There's still things that they can do. So really the table should be called taxable entity table. And so we try and incorporate, well, if they got 18 accounts, I don't care. They still only have one taxable entity. So we try and incorporate that up into a single record. And there's a bunch of gotchas that are inside of the ARCU version of that. Like you'll find that there's member number that sits inside of ARCU. And you go, oh, I've already got a unique identifier. I don't need to do anything else. Well, that member number gets generated every single day with no continuity. So somebody's member number yesterday and somebody's member number today may not be the same. Sometimes it will be, but it may not. So if you're wanting to kind of do longitudinal analysis to go, I want to look at this member across 3 years of transactional records, you're going to have to go stitch together all of the member numbers for each of those periods to do that analysis. It's really painful. So that's part of the reason why we don't use the member items out of ARCU, is because they're very unstable. That's why we ended up having to essentially build our own, is to deal with that. The only other caveat I'll put to that is something that doesn't happen inside of ARCU ever, regardless of whether they think you got a good member model, is that we work with quite a few places that have large indirect loan portfolios. And you would be astounded at the number of times where Social Security numbers are transposed by 1 digit. Happens all the time. So in previous environments, what happens is that essentially that member record is kind of destroyed when they put in the new Social Security number. We do a match that says basically if it's only off by 1 digit, we'll maintain the integrity of that previous member record. So there is continuity. You don't have that break. Now, for places that don't have large indirect loan portfolios, that's less of an issue. But for places that do, that's a huge problem for them to have all these kind of like dangling name records sitting out there that have no continuity to each other. So there's probably way too much detail, but I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of color of how our member table works.
Yeah, no, that was the level of detail I was going to work down to. Yeah, because that's what I was wondering, if it would be a sufficiently stable, unique identifier that we could also use. Because that is one item, is kind of anonymizing member data for other systems.
Sure.
Right now, yeah, we're kind of limited to account numbers and socials and those kind of things, but we're kind of uneasy about sending those off to, I mentioned deep target, right? So
sure,
sending
absolutely.
that kind of data out, but we still need a unique identifier between what we send them and what we have. So yeah, that's what I was getting at.
No, if that's your issue, then this is a perfect solution to that because it's the same member number that they get one when they're when we create the record and they stay the same all the time, right? And it's we attach it to their account, we attach it to their products, we attach it to the transactions, so you can move up and down the stack with the same unique identifier, and you can send it anywhere because it's not like you can take that member profile key and walk into a branch and go, I am member number 624.
Right.
You're-
Yeah, it's meaningless
telling it
outside
like,
of
what?
Analytic-
What are you
yeah.
talking about? Right? It is a
Exactly. It's
useless number to
Yeah.
anyone outside of doing analytics, right?
analytics, right? Yep. That was what I was wondering. Yep.
Perfect. Other questions or thoughts?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, certainly if there's additional thoughts later on, certainly send them to us. As I'm sure you can tell, I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I will talk your ear off if you let me to. So just feel free to throw those questions out there.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody again for staying on and asking those questions and participating. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Take
thanks.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.